Hey all, this is Andy here from the Artist Dread. With COVID hitting, we have decided to focus on artists affected by this pandemic and to try to share some of their stories with you through our podcast, Tag Talks. COVID is going to do a lot of damage to our communities and our people we love and care about. Events that have been planned are being canceled, plans that have long been in place have been uprooted. We want to use this platform to invite people on to talk about how COVID has hit them, what they had planned, and what they are currently doing. With that being said, please enjoy this episode. Hey, so my name is Andy Bauer. I am here with Sarah Johnson talking about her occupation and life as an artist right now in COVID and being a human in COVID quarantine. So just wanted to start off that way. Sarah, if you want to say hi and introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. I'm Sarah Johnson, and I wear a lot of hats. I am a human, first and foremost. I work full-time as the mental health director of the La Crosse area Family YMCA in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I have the good fortune of being able to be an artist, and I'm also a pet owner. Being visited by one of my coworkers right now, the orange one. And he's now walking on the computer, of course. I have the good fortune of being able to do art. It's something that I really, really love. So I am an artist, but it's not my full-time occupation. I say that just because I have many friends who are full-time artists right now who are really struggling financially. I've lost income just over the last month, but it's nothing compared to what many of our neighbors are experiencing. So I want to acknowledge that. I also had the good fortune of being named Winona's first creative laureate. So that's a really cool honor that I was bestowed. And there's no real definition for what that means other than just being an ambassador of the arts. And so I kind of see our conversation today as kind of a part of that role, and combining some of my other skills and experience too, as makes sense in this conversation. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, I haven't heard about that you being the creative laureate. I don't know if I was in a rock or in a cave, something like that. Tell me, how was that process? You know, what was that experience like, I guess?
Yeah, it's you haven't been under a rock. A lot of things happen and you don't have to know everything. In December, I believe, I don't know, time is not a thing anymore. I think it was December. I learned that I was named the creative laureate after an application process. So I did apply for it, which felt a little funny. I kind of felt like, oh well, but I say that because as much as I love art, I've always had a hard time calling myself an artist. It's something that I still am like, well, but I'm not really an artist. So it was funny to apply for that. But as I applied for it, I did realize that I have been doing art in Winona for about 20 years. And a lot of it I've done for free. I've done and just given to people. So it made me feel a little bit more like, oh yeah, no, actually I am an artist and I have been giving to this community. And so I will take that compliment. So thank you, Winona. So the Fine Arts Commission decided to shift it from a poet laureate to a creative laureate so that they had a little bit more room and a little bit more flexibility in recognizing all kinds of creatives. So it'll be a 3-year position. And like I said, there wasn't really a definition on what that could be. So what I started doing really was talking to different folks in town who are interested in the arts in one way or another. And I will be helping with the strategic planning that will be happening, the creative arts strategic planning that will be happening over this next year, which I'm really excited to be a part of. So I also probably want to sit down with you guys and hear more about the stuff that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime, really.
Yeah. Turns out calendars aren't a thing anymore.
Yeah. This is the most I've ever felt time being relative in my entire life.
Yes.
Yeah, like looking back on, like 4 weeks ago today, what would that have been? It's like, it feels like an entire millennia ago.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
I've been saying we're in like dog years for minutes.
Yeah.
So just do that math, 7 years for every minute.
it's it's truly confusing, and I don't know, like, when we things start to return to normal, I don't know how I'll be able to gauge time anymore.
Well, and it's funny you should say that because return to normal is a narrative that I think we need to examine.
Hmm.
I don't know that there's going to be the normal that we have ever understood before happening. And time being relative might be one of those maybe positive side effects that comes out of this
Hmm.
once all is said and done. But yeah, I don't really know what normal is going to be, and that's, I think, for a lot of us, terrifying. And at the same time, I feel like that also means that things are possible and things that we could never have imagined before are possible. And when I think about the creativity it takes to be a human being on a quote unquote normal day, and then the creativity and the innovation that we're every single one of us on the literally on the globe are forced to to exercise right now, that gives me a lot of really good hope about the resilience of the human population, as well as our ability to actually make some changes on this planet. The way we
Hmm.
were living was not sustainable, clearly. And so this is an opportunity where we don't really have a choice. We're going to have to be inventive.
Hmm. I like you said, I'm also optimistic, and I see it more as an opportunity than anything else. And just, change doesn't have to be bad, and the unknown doesn't have to be terrifying.
Right.
And I think it's interesting. Like, I think a lot of us have gone through those mental exercises of, like, what would I do in an apocalyptic situation? And
Right.
it turns out a lot of us would buy toilet paper, which is a fine normal reaction, I think. But, like, I don't think it's what anyone would have guessed.
Right.
Uh, so with I know you also work in mental health, and how has that been, like, for yourself and for a creative side? And what are you seeing more of right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am, my big message right now is we need to do all of the things that are good for you on a typical day when life is fine. We need to do those tenfold right now in order to really adequately care for ourselves for a number of reasons. One, the news is grim, and some of our friends and neighbors on this planet are already experiencing losses, and that is scary. We know we haven't hit the peak yet, and knowing that things could continue to get worse is really hard. There's a lot of really natural anxiety that comes up, and when we experience anxiety and we don't notice it and we don't tend to it, it can cause us to do things like buy toilet paper and not make good decisions because we're in kind of wavering in panic mode. And so that is really important, that we really work to keep that anxiety at a manageable place. And so all of the things that we do on a regular day are important, and doing more of them and adding to our toolkit is really important. So for me, my anxiety was really bad those first week or so that uh, that it was named a pandemic. I had been anxious up to then, but then when I really started to wrap my brain around the magnitude of what we're experiencing here, I was very, very anxious. And so I started hitting the trails. That's one of my therapies anyway. But I've been in nature even more and walking and running even more because that's really helped settle my brain. And it's really good time to think, to process, and also sometimes just stop and just breathe in and just take in what's there and just allow myself to feel safe in that moment and know that this is where I am now. This is where I am. I'm not anywhere else. There's a lot of things I don't have control over, but I have control over this moment.
Hmm.
So that's been really helpful for me. And I've found myself kind of settling in and grounding down in a way that feels really familiar to me. And I, as I kind of was noticing that sense of steadfast determination and really heart out compassion for the world, I realized this is how I felt as my mom was dying. And that same, what Viktor Frankl calls tragic optimism. So that ability to be like, okay, this is the shit. This is what's in front of me right now. It's not all pretty. And how do I want to show up in this moment? I want to show up as a compassionate person who can settle their mind, who can offer what I have to offer to whomever is able to accept it. And so I really feel like, as the mental health practitioner in me is seeing anxiety everywhere. It's really natural for most of us on the planet to be more anxious right now. And certainly those of us who have diagnoses previously, if baseline is already high, this can really add to it. So I'm very concerned about the mental health of our folks who already were struggling and the mental health of the globe. So I am seeing a lot of my work right now as trying to help flatten the curve of mental health that's going to be following this wave of virus. So if we are successful in flattening the curve of the virus, we still are losing a lot of our friends and neighbors on the planet and causing a lot of financial hardship, which also, both of those things impact our mental health. What really buoys me is knowing that when we look back over other disasters and other things that people have experienced, we have really steady data that says that most of us are going to come through this, even with losses, even it being a trauma. Most of us are going to come out the other side actually stronger, more resilient. It's something we call post-traumatic growth. And so that's really, to me, again, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about really, truly how powerful humans are, even in the face of the unimaginable. We're able to make it through a lot of really difficult things. And so when I think about the flattening of the curve then of mental health, I want to see everybody on the planet get steady and bring that compassion so that we can each help each other, because we already don't have enough counselors in the world to meet the need that we have. We all need to learn to have those skills to support one another and really preserve the mental health professionals for folks who really need more than what we, just as compassionate friends and neighbors and empathic folks who know how to listen truly, can do. So I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, that absolutely does. I hadn't heard post-traumatic growth before. I love that term. I think that's a beautiful thing. I had remembered, in previous conversations with you, you had talked about, being in somewhat of a rural area, mental health still is kind of like, people are a little bit of like afraid of talking about it and things like that. And, I think you said like, like everyone has mental health. Like,
right.
Everyone has it. How it's doing is the actual health of it. Like, and I think I remember you saying that term, and that has been something that stuck with me. That, and I started doing a long time ago at work. I have a little alarm every hour I took that from you. But I think that's something cool that, I've been doing, but do you think that the rural areas are going to possibly be hit harder by this, or not harder in the sense of like more grieving or anything like that, but like in the terms of not having the toolkit there? What do you think, what is available to people as well, if that made sense?
Yeah. I would say there are so many things we don't know about what's to come and how it's going to play out. Having said that, we already have a crisis amongst our rural folks and farmers in particular. We're seeing a lot of suicide. And so I'm concerned with the economic impact of this, what that's going to do to our friends in the farming industry. I think we, speaking access is difficult. One of the things that I think has been really phenomenal is seeing how many different people and organizations are stepping up from so many different sectors. And one of the things that I am really excited about is across the nation, telehealth has become something that all kinds of states have said, yep, nope, people still need mental health care. We need to keep people safe and physically distanced from one another, but that connection is going to be really important. And so all kinds of states, I think all of the states at this point, have lifted their restrictions around who can offer telehealth, which means that someone rurally, if they have internet, could do face-to-face like you and I are doing via Zoom right now. And if they can't do video, they can still do phone contacts. So even though in the past we've seen rural areas harder hit probably because they have less access, that's changed now. And I'm hoping that we can advocate for that to continue.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of shifting gears here, have you found yourself, I know you have been saying that you've been going on hiking trails and things like that, and, exerting yourself physically, I think is kind of the mantra of what you've said has been something that you've turned to. Have you been able to create more, or is that, how does that balance in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was gonna talk about that a little bit too. I initially, when the first shell shock just was numbed out, which is not an uncommon reaction. We don't want to keep people there, but if you found yourself kind of shell shocked and numb and not kind of frozen, that's normal. And I found that what helped me in that moment, so got physically active, I also got connected with my people, and I took out a board and I primed it white. And that's all I had energy for that day. But what that helped me do is build some momentum towards starting to think about what am I going to paint on that board. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of the background on that board. And now the next day I'm going to do one letter on that board. So I really kind of gave myself this jump start into leaning into what I know is one of my best coping skills, which is creating things. So at the bottom of my drive, I now have 3 signs that I painted. One says steady heads, open hearts. The other is a wave and it says ride the wave. And the other is a rainbow that says let nature nurture you. And I did those for me, but I put them down there for other people. And what I've heard just today, I was down in my yard picking up sticks, because this is another thing I'm doing, letting myself do something that I maybe wouldn't have bothered to do or wouldn't have given the time for, like picking up sticks that have fallen into my yard. So I was picking up sticks in my yard today and appreciating that I had the time to do that and energy to do that. And some people were walking down my road whom I've never met before, and they read my signs and they all said, thank you for this. This is so positive. This is so helpful. And that just it's making me cry a little bit right now too, because we're here for each other.
That's the shit that matters.
It is.
Yeah.
It's totally the shit that matters.
I loved I think I see a lot of people talking about come out with, quarantine with like a new skill, and that's cool and all. Yeah. And I like that concept. But I also like what you said about you primed the board. Yep. You painted it white, and that's all you had the energy to do that day, and that's fine. And I agree, and I love that so much. Of just some days you might be super productive and you can do anything and climb Everest, whatever. And some days you just get outside, and that's fine, especially in the midst of a pandemic. I think that's very healthy and very normal.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I too I love the idea of, yes, let's come through this better with more skills, but that's a privilege, right? Like, I don't have children that I'm trying to homeschool while I'm also trying to work in my house during a crisis, right? So I have a little bit more time and bandwidth to start trying to teach myself ukulele chords, which I've been doing one chord a day. And that's all I've got bandwidth for. But certainly if I had kids around, or if I had somebody that I was trying to take care of, or if I was more concerned about my finances than I already am, like, there's no way I'm going to be suddenly having new skills and being able to do all these things. So I really want people to think about the scale of what you can do, and really thinking about, none of us are working from home right now. We are all at home trying to protect each other and ourselves in the middle of a crisis, and somehow trying to work. And for those of us who are parents or caregivers, also trying to take care of our children, and also trying not to lose our minds during this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you don't have to create something. Having said that, if creating things is something that gives you comfort, I say do the little small things that you can. So I just saw, I didn't realize that they were doing it today, but the Minnesota Marine Art Museum, this today is, when we're recording this, is second Saturday. And traditionally, that's a really great day where the museum is much more accessible to folks, because it's just $1 admission and they have all kinds of really cool, engaging activities for the family. Well, that can't happen right now while we're keeping each other safe at home. And so they have all kinds of virtual things, including a PDF of the mural that I painted, that we were supposed to be painting together today. So it's a big mural of Winona, paint by number. And I'm really thankful that Dave was able to turn it into a coloring sheet that folks can print out and color at home. So I'm hoping, even if you don't consider yourself creative, that you maybe take a moment and use that coloring sheet to just be. And something you can use with kids if you have kids at home too.
I love that. I didn't realize that they had done the PDF. That's like so cool.
They're doing really cool stuff virtually.
Yeah. I was going to ask, as we get to the tail end here, where could we find some of your artwork? Creative laureate aspects. If people listening to this are curious, where can they go to see?
Yeah, funny you should ask me that in this period of time where I have art in 2 shows that you can't go to. I actually launched my show Soul Fuel at the Heron the week before the pandemic started. So that remains there right now, but we'll see, what happens moving forward. I also have a piece up at Ed's No Name in the women's show. So hopefully when we start to reopen, you can see some of those things in those places and support those businesses as well. I do have jewelry over at the Minnesota Marine Art Museum. Again, you can't go there right now, but I have long had a Post-it note on my desk that says, make a website.
I am on that same page right now.
But I'm excited to tell you, I just got the message this morning from Squarespace that it finally was able to bring my domain name over from GoDaddy. So I think I actually have a website. I just haven't put anything on it yet. Oh. So to come is thejoylabs.com. So the Joy Labs are going to be a place where people can see my art and where folks can hire me to do any of the millions of things that I do in the creative and mental health world. So some help painting your living room, perhaps, or painting a mural, or maybe getting out on the trail with you and talking about what gives your life purpose and meaning, helping you figure out how to have more creativity in your day-to-day life, or in your family, or in your organization. So that's to come down the line. Everything I'm doing right now is kind of moving me towards that, but it's a pandemic. I don't really know how to design a website, so it might be a little bit before that's actually live.
And I'd be remiss to not talk about Old Fashions. You guys also had a show going on at the end of the month, if I'm not mistaken, for the women's, what is the actual title? Yep. And I think that was a burlesque drag show. Is that what I heard?
At this point, I don't even remember what was going to be happening. A lot of things were going to be happening. Yeah, we had a number of gigs that were canceled. I'm hoping that we can play July 3rd at the Trempolo Hotel and July 4th at the Levee as planned, but only time will tell what is really still possible at that point.
It's weird. I feel like I'm living in this fantasy world of like planning out things and like, oh yeah, like maybe in August we can do this. And it's like, I don't know if that's going to happen at all.
We don't know. Yeah. And I think best for our mental health to plan things with the plan for contingency. Right?
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to pin my hopes on something and then fall apart when it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's all I had today. I just wanted to just talk to you and get some of your pick your brain about some things. And yeah, this has been wonderful. I always love talking to you.
Same, Andy. And I want to say I appreciate you so much in so many ways. I see your steady presence and compassionate presence on Facebook, and you're so good at engaging people in really important questions. I love that.
Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to tell you that I'm doing, and I'll do a post about this at some point, but in the woods, I have been leaving little sticks in the shape of the word hi. And some moss actually was what I used yesterday. And each time that I stop and leave that little message for the universe, for whoever is going to come across it, I stop and do a little bit of a kind of a loving kindness meditation and send out love to a specific person or family or people, or sometimes just the globe. But yesterday's was for you. So
thank
I know
you.
you received that around 8 a.m., but
I think I may have. I had a jolt into my day there.
Good. Yep, that was me.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm going to...
We're glad you caught this episode of Tag Talks. Check the links in the description below to find further content and discover the artist's work for yourself. You can find more episodes of Tag Talks on Spotify or explore what else we do at www.theartistgrid.com and connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at The Artist Grid.